Bank is
CVM News at 7 Wednesday headlines, courtesy of Heart NSDA Trust, Jamaica's Human Development Agency.
Tonight in CVM News at 7 hospitalized following chemical exposure at call center. How sweet, sugary drinks tax modifications welcomed, and Efficiency Ministry implements digital transaction policy. In the business report, an audience with Jeffrey Hall, CEO and Vice Chairman, Pan Jamaica Group Limited. While in sports, Reggae Boys hold final training session ahead of must-win New Caledonia clash.
CVM News at 7 Wednesday headlines, courtesy of Heart NSDA Trust, Jamaica's Human Development Agency.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winford Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
CVM News at 7 Wednesday, courtesy of.
Seize the next IPO opportunity seamlessly with the Sagicor e-Invest.
From Kingston, Jamaica, this is CVM News at 7. It's Wednesday, March 25, 2026. I'm Nika Lewis. Thank you for joining us. First up tonight, modifications to the recently announced non-alcoholic sugary beverages tax and a revision of the controversial Environmental Protection Levy by the Finance Minister Tuesday has left stakeholders and experts somewhat relieved. Aside from calls for clarity on alternative sweeteners, it's felt this is a much better option than what was initially announced. Despite seeking the public's buy-in for its latest tax measures, the government's move left some stakeholder groups with a bad taste and potentially at a disadvantage. Manufacturers of non-alcoholic sugary beverages weighed in, demanding incentives to sweeten the switch. In the end, businesses said it would be the poor who pay more as they're heavy consumers of low-cost sugary beverages. Minister Favour Williams didn't roll back those taxes, but after consultations, there were adjustments.
We recommended from that time that there be a graduated tax with more tax being imposed on drinks which have more sugar content. I think finally the government has heeded the call of both the opposition plus the industry and has implemented something now which I believe will meet the health objectives of ensuring that more Jamaicans reduce their sugar content and reduce the likelihood of non-communicable diseases.
CARICOM tax lead Mr. Brian Denning of PwC, an international auditing firm in Jamaica, says the recently concluded budget debate exposed the philosophical differences between the opposition PNP and the governing JLP. On the matter of the sugary drinks taxes, Denning explains the modifications are better than the initially announced taxes, but cites grey areas in the other 22 countries the tax is used.
Where you tend to see some of the issues come into, do you apply it to pre-mixed drinks? Do you apply it to concentrated drinks? As we know, concentrated syrups are quite popular here in Jamaica. They're sold and people mix it up.
Sugar control then depends on the individual and could still see high sugar consumption. Some are also curious about the tax as it concerns milk-based beverages with natural sugars, non-calorific sweeteners, and pre-mixed or powder beverages. Internationally, he notes,
they want to try to impact products that have natural sugars in them, not just in the case of fruit juices, but for example, if you have obviously milk has milk sugar in it, natural milk sugars in it in terms of lactose, and it also oats milk, for example, as a substitute. These are the natural ingredients going into it do have their natural sugar content.
The special consumption tax will now be based on sugar content and not volume as was initially indicated. Mr. Denning notes there will be need for a trade-off as consumption of the beverages will mean the health goal is being missed. Yet, meeting the health goal will over time result in reduced consumption and tax collection.
Recently, Finance Minister Favour Williams announced Jamaica's first new taxes in a decade with a major focus on sugary drinks. At the center of the proposal was a special consumption tax on non-alcoholic sweetened beverages set at 2 cents per milliliter and projected to generate 10.1 billion Jamaican dollars annually. But the move was met with swift resistance from industry stakeholders who argued that the structure unfairly penalized manufacturers regardless of actual sugar content. Now, in a significant policy shift, Minister Williams has announced a redesign of the tax. Instead of being based on volume, the tax will now be calculated at 22 cents per gram of added sugar, meaning beverages with no added sugar will attract no tax, while those with higher sugar content will be taxed more heavily. Implementation has also been delayed from April 1 to May 1, giving both manufacturers and Tax Administration Jamaica additional time to prepare despite the change in structure. The government maintains that the revenue target remains unchanged at $10.1 billion. President of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, Catherine Silvera, says the revised approach addresses the association's main concern, aligning taxation more closely with actual sugar content rather than product volume.
It's a tax being calculated on a per gram basis of added sugar. And so what that means is it's proportionate based on the grams of sugar, and it was introduced as really a health tax or a sin tax because Jamaicans on a whole are, becoming more obese, becoming more diabetic, having a lot more NCDs, and really weighing down the health sector and contributing to a number of doctors' visits, a number of medications under the NHF. And this, I think, addresses that, because if it is, let's say, a soda probably has a higher range of sugar, let's say between 40 to 60 grams. You're talking about maybe a 500 ml. This tax would now maybe add $14 to that soda, whereas maybe a lower flavored water beverage, let's say, that has some added sugar, that might be around 5 to 10 grams of sugar, that's only adding on, let's say, a little over $2 in tax.
Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness, in his 11th budget presentation, says his administration's foreign policy remains centered around the best interest of the Jamaican economy and its people. He, however, notes troubling developments in world affairs, which he says have left many Jamaicans worried. Budget address at a time when global superpowers in the East and the West are at odds over varying issues which have and will in some way impact the Jamaican economy and people. Amid these rising tensions and with close allies, North America, heaping sanctions on regional relatives including Venezuela and Cuba, the Prime Minister has often been called out for not being more resistant to demands of the North.
As powers seek to advance their interests unilaterally, it begs for a reform, urgent reform actually, of the global multilateral system. We cannot abandon it but it must be reformed to take into consideration these new power dynamics that have emerged.
He went further to explain Jamaica must be strategic and not fall back on failed ideologies of the past, shooting a dart through the decisions under the PNP in the 70s and 80s, for which he says the country has suffered for decades.
In this dynamic foreign policy environment, Jamaica must be strategic. We cannot go down the road of ideological rhetoric. Been there, done that.
Dr. Holness reassures his priority is to the best interest of the Jamaican people and the country's swift economic recovery. And if his critics were still unclear about his position or questioned what could happen if the leader were to take a more rigid approach in the midst of these developments, he asserts much is at stake.
Grey list, the way our structure and system was, it was reviewed. We ended up on the grey list. Every member of the government worked very hard, including members of the opposition, to pass the necessary legislation, make the necessary policy changes. I mean, there were those saying that these, imperialists imposing global financial things on us, make we resist it. And what? Lose access to the international banking system? That's the logic of the argument.
Nika Lewis, CVM News.
Chaos unfolded at the Fusion call center on Orange Street in downtown Kingston today as 7 employees were rushed to hospital after reportedly coming into contact with a chemical inside the building. CVM News understands that the incident may have been triggered during carpeting work. One of the workers is now nursing a nosebleed linked to the incident. In a world where artificial intelligence, AI, is slowly taking over, the Innovative and Digital Transformation Ministry is moving with the time and new technology with the full implementation of the electronic signatures and the electronically signed records policy launched on Wednesday. A full rollout of the policy will see all government ministries and private agencies adopting to the use of legal digital signatures and electronic transactions to fully enforce the Electronic Transaction Act, which was passed in 2007. Natasha Williams reports.
During a re-examination, the prosecution's 17th witness, a detective sergeant, was asked to clarify matters arising out of cross-examination. The witness, during cross-examination, told the court he had removed and secured a bag at the crime scene where William Christian was shot before the arrival of a detective corporal. When asked by the prosecution if he had secured anything else prior to the detective corporal's arrival, he responded no. Further in re-examination,
we apologize for the incorrect insert there. We'll have more right after this break.
The last thing on their mind until it becomes the only thing on their mind. Critical illness has many faces. 1 in 4 people will be affected. Protect what matters with critical illness insurance from Sagicor Life.
New fast food always tastes to savor. Giving you the best, giving you the flavor. Nice enough the kitchens all across Jamaica. Happy smile when you see the price you pay for. Corned beef and the sausage. New pack. Ketchup and the pepper sauce. New pack. Beans and the baked beef. New pack. Rice. New pack. No oil. New pack. Yes. New fast foods always taste to savor. Giving you the best, giving you the flavor. Nice enough the kitchens all across Jamaica. Happy smile when you see the price you pay for. New pack. More than just value.
Employers, once a month, you have the power to shape Jamaica's future. By paying your hard 3% contribution, you're not just contributing, you're investing in people, in skills, in our economy. Your hard contribution trains working-age Jamaicans, aligns programs with workforce needs, and secures our future. That's not just contribution, it's transformation. Contribute to heart and to your future.
On March 28 at 6 p.m., John Mark Wigan presents his album launch, By Fire, live at the Jamaica College Auditorium. By Fire features the likes of Kevin Downswell, Rondell Positive, Alicia Taylor, Gilead Collective, Genesis Praise Squad, Audia Spencer Brown, Ryan Davis, Prince Saj. General tickets $4,000. Sponsored by JP St. Mary's, Credit Unions of Jamaica, Honey Bun, Chicken and Things, CVM, Love 101, Green Room Studios, Painted Lady Studios, Crosslings Production, Imperium Gospel Limited. Proceeds support the Student Housing Initiative.
Thanks so much for staying with us. Still in the local segment, the re-examination of the prosecution's 17th witness commenced on Wednesday in the Supreme Court as the prosecution sought to clarify key issues raised under cross-examination in relation to the murder of William Christian. Carla Ramdeen was in court and files this report.
Witness, a detective sergeant, was asked to clarify matters arising out of cross-examination. The witness, during cross-examination, told the court he had removed and secured a bag at the crime scene where William Christian was shot before the arrival of a detective corporal. When asked by the prosecution if he had secured anything else prior to the detective corporal's arrival, he responded no. Further, in re-examination arising from answers given in cross-examination, the witness agreed that one of the Crown's star witnesses gave a statement under a pseudonym, but said he did not know why it was used. Based on that response, the witness was asked, in light of his 25 years of experience as a detective, the usual reasons for statements being recorded under pseudonyms. An objection was raised on the grounds that the question invited speculation and that there was no foundation. The prosecution argued that the question was intended to clarify standard procedures within the JCF, particularly as the issue arose during cross-examination. The judge permitted the question. The witness explained that pseudonyms are used to protect a person's identity and that a pseudonym is chosen by the officer recording the statement and the individual. The witness was then asked whether one of the star witnesses had been charged with murder of William Christian when he visited the Central Village Police Station on November 27, 2020. The defense objected, arguing that this line of questioning should have been addressed during examination in chief and not now when the defense does not have the opportunity to respond. The judge allowed the question. The witness told the court that the star witness was not charged with murder in relation to the matter. The matter is set to resume on Thursday, March 26, 2026. Carla Ramdeen, CVM News.
Now, in a world where artificial intelligence, AI, is slowly taking over, the Innovative and Digital Transformation Ministry is moving with the time and new technology with the full implementation of the electronic signatures and the electronically signed records policy launched on Wednesday. A full rollout of the policy will see all government ministries and private agencies adopting to the use of legal digital signatures and electronic transactions to fully enforce the Electronic Transaction Act, which was passed in 2007. Natasha Williams tells us more.
Moving from paper to digital. The new bold move, the ministry with responsibility for efficiency, innovation, and digital transformation, Ambassador Audrey Marks, has signed, sealed, and already reaping successful results following the official launch of the e-transaction policy on Wednesday, which will now allow for electronic signatures to be legally accepted across all ministries. Speaking at the post-cabinet press briefing at Jamaica House, Marks says this is a national initiative designed to bring Jamaica a step closer to achieving digital transformation.
The primary objectives of the policy are to establish a standardized, risk-based framework for the use of electronic signatures, promote authentication, integrity and accountability and auditability of electronic transactions, improve efficiency, business continuity, and reduce reliance on paper-based processes, ensure alignment with the Electronic Transactions Act and related legislative requirements.
With an aim to wipe out the slow processes with bank transactions, courthouse operations, and a backlog of files, Mark says this will now see a reduction in time when conducting businesses, increases efficiency, and a more modern public sector. In ensuring security, an embedded system called the Public Key Infrastructure has already been installed by the Information and Communications Technology Authority to allow for trusted digital signatures. Chief Information Officer at the organization, Anika Shuttleworth, described the initiative as a very deliberate move for Jamaica.
And what we are doing is to move from paper to digital, from delays to efficiency, and from uncertainty to trust.
Principal Director for Accounting and Financial Policy in the Ministry of Finance and Public Services, Barrington Thomas, says in embracing the changes, he will be altering the company's website immediately to reflect and accommodate more electronic services.
We really see government entities working together to pull something off which is very critical for nation building, for ease of doing business, for just efficiency. This policy indicates the guidelines as to say that the government will accept electronically signed documents such as our invoices, so contractors, suppliers can be rest assured that efficiency has begun.
Natasha Williams, CVM News.
Meanwhile, the digital signature is being touted one of the most secure forms of electronic signing. Experts maintain digital signatures and other e-transactions will allow for paperless methods of authorization and authentication.
Director of the National Identification and Registration Authority, Dr. Warren Vernon, presented the National Public Key Infrastructure as part of the National Identification System NIDS project. He likened the usage of the NIDS card to currently used debit and credit cards, assuring that Jamaica has the infrastructure to support this implementation.
That paperless method of authorization could be facilitated in a number of ways. Could be a click, could be a tap, could be a PIN, like your debit and credit card, could be using biometric for authentication, and it could also be the use of cryptographic keys.
E-signatures and other digital authorization will take effect within the Court Administration Division. Judge Mitzi Beaumont Daly explains the division has already begun to operationalize elements of the digital transformation, most notably for the electronic signing of warrants. She says this eliminates the logistical challenges and inefficiencies of manual systems.
All our parish courts are now positioned to utilize the electronic signing of warrants as part of the Ticket Information Management System, TIMS, in an effort to significantly enhance and streamline the warrant processing framework.
Meanwhile, Minister Audrey Marks underscores job security for segments of the workforce, to include bearers attached to various government agencies and businesses implementing this policy.
Digitalization, the use of AI, taking away jobs, is also creating new jobs. I would encourage the ministries to redeploy persons who used to be bearers into other roles. We're not looking at terminations. We're looking at greater productivity and upskilling across the public service.
Crystal Williams reporting for CVM News.
We take a break. Stay with us.
You see me? Me love my food and my ketchup run the flavor in so many ways. Miss Flowers, I want to turn up your food, sir.
My secret ingredients, just to make the ketchup run the flavor.
Richer, thicker, and more affordable.
Give me the ketchup.
Critical illness has many faces. 1 in 4 people will be affected. Protect what matters with critical illness insurance from Sagicor Life.
New KFC Saucy Wings. Hot and spicy wings tossed in our irresistible sauce. Available in sweet red chili and citrus chipotle barbecue. KFC, it's finger licking good.
Hi, I am Kendi Pang.
Watagwan. Watagwan.
Datagwan pa.
Watagwan. Watagwan.
Watagwan. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 a.m., 1:30 p.m., and 10 p.m. on CVM TV.
Datagwan pa Watagwan.
Thanks so much for staying with us. It's now time for the Business Report with Joel Crossgill.
Plenty to share with you in the Business Report today. From the panorama of possibilities afforded by the performance of one of the largest businesses in the region by revenue, and told from the perspective of CEO and Vice Chairman of the Pan Jamaica Group, Jeffrey Hall, whose stewardship of the entity's 4 core business quadrants has demonstrated the robustness of the PJG business model.
There's no particular shock, whether it be a hurricane or a war or FX movements or any other specific shock by itself that can destabilize the whole group. It's tested in that respect through the most recent hurricane cycle, and it came out strong. Our earnings are up 38% year on year.
A performance in part due to a process that saw the amalgamation of Pan Jam Investments Limited and Jamaica Producers Group Limited, completed nearly 4 years ago.
The amalgamation was designed to build a company that can last. I think the fact of Melissa, the fact of changing trade rules, tested the model, but the model is built for generations. It's built intentionally diverse. It's built as a light holding company with strong form operating businesses. So it's intended to be able to withstand shocks. Right now, it's extremely difficult to predict the expectations for economic conditions. So what we've done is made sure that we have a diverse business.
And those revenue streams extend well beyond Jamaica's borders.
Pan Jamaica is diverse geographically. So we have significant manufacturing operations in Europe, in the Dominican Republic. We are diverse by lines of business. We now have 4 distinct lines of business, all of which are quite substantial. Our investment, our 30% interest in Sagicor. So Sagicor Group Jamaica, under Chris Zaka's leadership, has itself a diverse portfolio of entities within the financial services sector, and they themselves move differently depending on circumstances. So they also have the benefit of this kind of arrangement. So there's the bank, there's the life insurance business, the investment management business, and those businesses move ever so slightly differently depending on the macroeconomic, the interest rate environment, the foreign exchange environment, etc.
It was within that context that I asked the Panjam Group's chief executive for his perspective on Minister Williams' plan to increase pension funds' private asset limit from 5 to 7.5% of total assets, potentially releasing 21.2 billion Jamaican dollars of long-term capital for investment in local private companies.
Let me just say at the outset that I have a lot of confidence in the ideas that Minister Williams is putting forward. First of all, she is perhaps the most experienced in the business of asset management and capital markets and financial markets of any Minister of Finance in the history of Jamaica. So she brings to this discourse a level of personal experience that I think is useful to those who are looking at it. Let me say that the effort to make capital, long-term capital, which is the nature of the pension fund business, available to develop private enterprise is useful. It needs to be stewarded by interests that respect the fact that these funds are intended to be available for retirement of our citizens, and that they are part of a portfolio that includes other types of assets that are appropriate to the risk profile of a pension fund. The specific case of a release of funds within the pension world, which is say 850 billion of assets, to be used for private capital, that decision my view that one of the constraints to growth is the need for capital by private enterprise. My view is that that is a fair assessment of a problem. It's not the only problem that Jamaica faces, but it's one of the problems, and I think Minister Williams is right to address it. From the perspective of our exposure to Sagicor, which of course is an independent listed company with its own team and governance structure, but we do take a view of it. Some persons would say, well, you're releasing capital from pension funds to crowd out other parts of the financial services sector. Our view as a holder of Sagicor is that Sagicor is the best arrayed platform. So it can address the needs at every level, and so this release of an opportunity for pension assets is a good thing from our perspective. I mean, that's an illustration of the strength of our group.
And we'll learn much more on why that's the case in a subsequent business report. I'm Joel Crossgill.
CVM News at 7 continues right after the break.
Has many faces. 1 in 4 people will be affected. Protect what matters with critical illness insurance from Sagicor Life.
Power in great moments. If you have financial needs, Chris and Charles will fix them for you. Power in great moments since 1992. Oh, we have it all. Power in great moments. Relax, you got Chris and Charles. Oh, we have it all. When you think alone, think Chris and Charles.
At Jack Den Medical Services, expert care is never out of reach. We provide advanced cancer treatment, safe, high-quality dialysis, trusted ophthalmology services, and comprehensive cardiology care. Plus fast, reliable results from our Suma lab, all at unbeatable prices. Call us, visit our website, or message us on social media. Jack Den Medical Services, affordable, world-class.
Tune in to Lead Story, weekdays at 6 p.m. Hosted by Jody Ann Quarry.
Brought to you by Horizon, a new loan product from Access Financial Services.
Welcome back. Concerns among financial experts tonight after the budget presentations in Gordon House concluded Tuesday without any speaker addressing the sharp rise in fuel costs. The ongoing war in the Middle East has pushed global oil prices up sharply, and Jamaicans are feeling the effects of the pumps, or at the pumps rather. Stakeholders say economic growth can't be sustained if the government continues to ignore what they describe as the elephant in the room.
At the start of March 2026, the ex-refinery price of 87 gasoline, meaning the benchmark cost before gas stations at their own markups, stood at $154 per litre. Today, that price has jumped to $167 per litre. The pump price, which is what consumers actually pay after markups, is hovering around $188 at local gas stations. Over the past few weeks, Jamaicans have been decrying the financial pressure brought on by the geopolitical crisis, as they say they're struggling to keep up with the rising costs. Some stakeholders say they were expecting Finance Minister Favour Williams or Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness to address this issue in their budget presentations. They didn't.
I expected at least some amount of preliminary assessment that might have been done over the next 2 weeks between the opening speech and this closing speech. So I was a bit surprised. I mean, I know that we cannot fully account for what the effects might be, but if we're forward-looking enough, we can see some of these things down the line.
Now, the government's budget plans assume that oil will cost about $60 per barrel. But right now, West Texas oil is near $97 and Brent crude is over $110 a barrel. Senior analyst at the Economist Intelligence Unit, Leanne Lynn, says the government may need to reassess the budget.
The assumptions that we are working on today is very, very different. With oil prices, fuel prices will go up, and that pretty much raises the prices for everything else. High cost of living will remain an issue. Although there was disinflation in the beginning of the year, that trend is likely going to reverse over the course of this year and the next. So for the fiscal position, the government really needs to take into account these new assumptions and adjust their spending plans.
Now, Jamaica currently has net international reserves of approximately $6.8 billion, designed as a buffer against volatile global oil prices and economic shocks. This covers roughly 36 weeks of goods and services imports. But economist Keenan Faulkner says this buffer might not be enough.
Yes, we have buffers, but that does not guarantee us the actual supply if it is that production capacity has been destroyed or otherwise attenuated. And so even though you have released a lot of reserves into the global supply, that is just very short term. So we have to really monitor the situation carefully. Costs to the government go up, fuel costs go up, utility costs go up. It could also be a drain on foreign exchange.
Meanwhile, stockbroker and businessman Ryan Strawn, who's also former president of the Jamaica Labour Party's G2K, says he's confident the disruption caused by the Middle East conflict won't persist for too long. On the matter of procuring oil,
there's a lead time between executing a contract and it getting on our shores and then being priced. So, I'm sure economists can speak in greater detail to that, but I would imagine, like, if you think about Petrojam and the other major suppliers, they have storage. The question one may ask is, well, was the price they bought the inventory at the price they're selling at now, or are they set at a higher price? That's business.
The men were speaking Tuesday on CVM's Lead Story Prime. Reporting for CVM News, I'm Amoy Harriet.
Up next, sports with Jordan Ford. Stay with us.